Good enough.
Yes, all right, Coach.
Well, we're back at that time again where we get another class in here. Excited about the group of young men that we've seen them assemble. Need to say a little bit about our organization and the group of gentlemen that put together this class for us. Our coaches, first of all, did, I thought, a fantastic job of putting together this class. Did a nice job of evaluating, and I think we got on the right kids. We got kids from a little bit of everywhere, a couple Florida kids, a couple Georgia kids, some North Carolina kids. Then, of course, we always emphasize the in-state kids, so we've got a good bit of South Carolina kids. And then, all of the other folk that went into the organization and the operation of putting this thing together. Everybody from our cafeteria staff to our academic folk, our professors and administrators played a big part in this entire process of getting this class in here. So it was a total team effort, and let's just hope once we get them here they can play because you know how it goes. You bring them in at this point, they're babies, and you don't know whether they're going to turn out to be the president or whatever. So we do think we've got a real nice class here. We've got somewhere in the mid-20s of kids, and it'll be interesting to see just how they get in here and get to work.
Coach, I know you told me as we talked about the off season that you wanted to get a little bit more offensive firepower in here, stretch the field a little better. I guess taking this class into account, how do you feel you've addressed that?
Well, I think we've done a nice job of addressing all of our needs. The wide receivers generally who you think about when you start talking about the stretching the field part, and we've got the Canomis is the kid from down in Atlanta, is really a big-time, deep ball kind of guy. The Tuttle kid from up in Charlotte, I think we all know that name. Canyon is a speed guy. His dad was a parent that played at Clemson so many odd years ago, and his mom, Loretta, was one of our Miss SC States some years ago. So, you're talking about a great gene pool there, but both those guys we think are top-notch wide receiver kind of prospects. And then we've got another couple of athletic kind of guys. I don't know exactly where they fit. The young man from out of HKT, Khalid Anthony. We've got a Bishop Ford wide receiver, running back. He's actually kind of pushing the mind of some of the wide receivers and running backs in our league that are breakaway kind of threat kind of guys. So we've got a good bit of guys that are speed guys that we think they'll come in here and give us some help pretty early in their careers.
I saw you went heavy on quarterbacks in this class. I know that you had a little. I told me earlier you might hoping for a transfer, but it doesn't seem like you came up with one.
No, and that may still happen, but we don't think we take one with as many quarterbacks as we took as the situation kind of presented itself. We ended up taking an in-state guy. We ended up taking a Georgia guy. We ended up taking a North Carolina guy, and they all seem to be great football intelligence style kind of guys. The game has gotten so now that these quarterback guys are all products of the passing leagues, the spread style offenses where you throw the football around. You can tell they've been doing it since they were probably playing little league ball and that kind of stuff. So when you go on the board with these guys and start talking about the progressions and the reads and that kind of stuff that you have to deal with as you go about the task of trying to select which guy fits the system that you're trying to run. All these guys seem to have those kinds of abilities. The intellectual kind of capabilities that you need to understand what we got to get done to make these offenses go. So, I'm excited about them. The York kid from North Carolina is a big-time throw-it-around guy. Goodman from over at West Florence was a Shrine Bowl selection. I guess the prototypical college read zone kind of guy that you have in the game today, and the Ford kid from down in Georgia, we think is a big time, can do both kind of guy. And then we've got another guy too that are athletic kind of I don't know exactly what position kind of guys. David Pendell from up in Oak Mills, Maryland, is a guy that might be, somebody that might be involved that way. And then you start talking about Khalid Anthony over at HKT might be that style guy. So it'll be interesting to see exactly who ends up in that position once we really get going. But I can tell you one thing, and that is that we got enough people to at least be able to run practice. Now, the problem we had last year, part of the time, was that we didn't have no quarterbacks to do all of the things that you need to do in practice. And, we got plenty now, so I'm excited about the fact that we go from having one scholarship quarterback to now at least 4.
I know on the defensive side this past season you had some young guys step up. Do you see anybody in this class that you're hoping to kind of fit that mold?
I don't know. I hate to call a name of one of these young men that might be able to come in and help us early. I can tell you one thing that I told our team this morning. We had a team meeting this morning, and I told them that that generally the thinking is that 99% of what we're going to be in 2015 was in that room this morning. So not very guys on this list will have much of an impact on this year's team, except for the fact that if a guy jumps out of there somehow or another and just got so much ability and so far along development-wise that he's a can't miss kind of guy, then we get him out there. But generally, we think that most of the guys we get need a little seasoning. It takes a little bit longer.
How could you stack this class up to some of the better ones you've had?
You know what? I think it's a good class. I don't know sometimes when we get them, and I don't know when you figure out sometimes when a class is really a good class, because this past year's class was a class that we redshirted almost the entire class. The previous year we did almost the same thing, and then those guys come out of that redshirt year, like a ball of fire. You had some of the Darius Leonards and the Greg Newells, all those guys, came out and played like seasoned veterans for us, but they were freshmen last year that had just had a good redshirt year. So if we continue to get a good solid year of development on these guys before we actually have to get them on the field, I think it makes it just so much better football team down the road when you got a bunch of 5-year guys. So we like redshirting them. So it's probably better for us if we don't necessarily try to depend on them too much to try to get out there too soon.
Coach, you kind of struggled a little bit on the offense and the defensive line this past season, but you added more depth with this recruiting class. Do you think you addressed some of those issues you had last year?
Let's hope so. Our offensive line has taken a hit or two with a couple guys, but we returned, some good solid guys there in a way that I think we'll be okay. The key for us, though, is to find what our team can do early and to be able to coordinate in a way where you get your skill level on the same page as your big man level. I don't know if you can have a team that's going to be changed a lot by this particular situation here. I think you still probably got another year or two before you see very many of these guys being involved too much.
Coach, you talked about just the depth that you guys have had in terms of your defensive unit, not only in your secondary but up front. And I know that's something you guys usually hang your hat on. Just talk about just the development process in terms of, because a lot of these guys, like you said, they're not going to play immediately, but how important is that redshirt year for these guys who've basically signed for you?
Well, I think it's huge, especially at this level. You don't get very many of the 4-star and the 5-star guys. You don't get any actually, that can come in and be an effective guy right out of high school. If a guy comes in and plays for us, at that part of his career, then somehow or another somebody's made a mistake because he probably should have played or should have been at one of the high-level kinds of schools. So we generally think that this is our best case scenario to get these guys. We had a couple of defensive line guys that if you really want to start talking about next year's team, you maybe should have had a guard to practice and saw those guys who were redshirt this past year, because we got a couple that are down there that that might be the guys that will be out on the front line this year. And sometimes you get those guys even to the point where they can just be kind of a part-time player for a little bit as the season starts, and then as the season goes on they get more and more play. Greg Newell's a perfect example of that. By the end of the year he might have been as good as any defensive line guy we had. But in the meantime, most of what we get done with the let's see. Okay, we got 2 more in. We got DeVille from Miami, and Dubose is in too. So right now we down probably up 2 more from what you had at that point. The only person that we're waiting on now is Pendel's got a ceremony that he's got it too. They're still going through that deal, but once that happens, then this whole list will be active. I'm sorry.
No, you good, Coach. But looking at your offensive line over the last couple of years, you guys have talked about just the struggles of finding that one guy to basically be the leader of that offensive line and be the one to kind of be the anchor for that offensive line. With this group of guys, not necessarily naming someone that will stand out, but how much do you think this group can push these guys that are currently on the roster, for spots to play?
Yeah, probably not very much. That's just kind of how it works. We've got some young men who will be in our program for a couple of years before they actually get an opportunity to be much of an impact, on the overall process. When you start looking at offensive line guys, that's just kind of how it works. If you get a guy who's going to play early in his career, most times it's a defensive lineman. And then, you'll get an offensive line guy that maybe redshirts a year and then maybe gets a chance to play a little bit. But it's very unusual for an offensive lineman to come in and be ready to play, right off the bat. We played some of the guys, Victor Ishmael played a lot last year as a redshirt freshman at the center position. We had a couple other guys. I think Justin Evans and some of those guys like that played some last year.